But don't look in your rearview mirror, here comes number 8. He's a rocker, little roller, and he sure knows how to shut him down. I guess he runs independent, intimidators back in town. Yeah, I guess he runs independent, intimidators back in town. That boy, stand up, son.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nasboys podcast. I'm your host, Savage NASCAR, also known as Seawell, and I'm here with my co-host, Mike, aka Mike 5M101.
What's up, guys?
And today we got a very special guest with us. We're here with Darian Gillum, also known as Black Flags Matter. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, me and Savage NASCAR, we've DM'd on NASCAR Instagram back and forth too. It's good to finally see you in person. Well,
yes,
kind of in person.
Yes, sir, it is. And thank you for coming on today. We got a lot of questions and a lot of things to talk about. But to start things off, I have to ask you the question we always ask the guests to come on the show. And that is, where or how did you find your interest in the sport of NASCAR?
Well, really, all started in first grade. I mean, so first grade, that would be 2004. So, I mean, a couple years prior, I had first started playing the NASCAR Thunder games. And that just shows how good NASCAR gaming used to be. I didn't even watch the sport for a while there, but I always loved playing the game. So then naturally, I progressed to watching it on TV. And the first ever race I watched from start to finish was the 2004 Daytona 500. I remember that race like it was yesterday. I mean, looking back now compared to other races, it was outside of Mikey's flip and all that stuff, it was low key kind of boring and kind of spread out, but Junior was racing and he ended up winning. So then, naturally in history, people are like, yeah, that was one of the greatest 500s ever, but it was it's kind of a meh one. But I mean, just seeing him cross the line and then, the fan reaction too, I instantly became a fan of his up until his retirement. And yeah, I watched the sport really all the way out in North Las Vegas my entire life, but I hadn't met any other fans. I mean, I really couldn't find any online communities or anything like that where it was there's other NASCAR fans and stuff until I found a couple of groups on Facebook before I started YouTube and stuff. And then I started interacting with them. And then after that, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm sick and tired of not being able to talk about racing and stuff. I would talk about it with my family all the time, but it's either their interest wasn't as didn't match the level of mine, or it's I would talk about certain opinions and then they'd be like, I don't know what to, I don't have a rebuttal, you know what I mean? Because I don't know what you're talking about basically. So so that's one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel Black Flags Matter, is to connect with more NASCAR fans on the internet, and then voila, it's here we are today.
It's awesome.
That's very cool, man. Speaking of your name, Black Flags Matter, what gave you the idea to make that username?
Yeah, see, that's always people, they're always so shocked whenever I talk to outsiders, and when I say outsiders, I mean people who don't watch racing at all and stuff, because they'll see my name and it's a 50-50 split. Some people will instantly get it. They'll be like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. It's kind of a clever play on words and stuff like that. It's not political satire, it's not social satire. I mean, obviously I'm a firm believer in, yes, Black Lives Matter all the time and stuff, but in no way is my channel making fun of that at all and stuff. And it's clear as day if you watch my content. But then the other side, the other half of that, unfortunately, some people, they don't really do their, a whole lot of research and stuff. So they'll automatically just assume the worst. So it's kind of interesting to see both clash. It's oh, his name's fine and his name's not and stuff. But I basically came up with it because, obviously I thought it'd be a clever play on words and stuff like that. And then obviously, you would see, this was around, I started the channel after high school. So I had just graduated, a month had passed, and I wanted to get into the YouTube thing. I was like, okay, should I try just putting my name Darian Gilliam, or should I have make up some clever name or whatever? Right. So I decided to do that. And then it just instantly hit me. I was watching the news and they were talking about BLM on the news channel. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, oh yeah, Black Flags Matter. That's an interesting name. Yeah. And, also, I was also thinking too about the social ramifications of it. Cause I'm like, well, is that okay? So I basically asked my parents, like pretty much because I'm mixed. So my dad's black and my mom's white. So I basically asked them. I asked my mom first. I was like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? And she's like, I don't like I know exactly what you're trying to do, but I'd go talk to your stepdad about that. And then once I asked him, he gave me the okay. He's like, oh yeah, dude, that's perfect. It's like perfect marketing and stuff. But as like, obviously you have to, represent yourself in the best way possible and all that, obviously don't pander to any of, the racist idiots and stuff like that. And that's another clever thing too. It's like, I've seen in the comments, people are like, oh, I love that name. It's funny and stuff like that. But then once people see what I look like and like, what I stand for, then it's like, hey, I got you, I reeled you in and stuff like that. So it's like, joke's on you, so that's basically how the name got started. I just asked my parents and stuff like, hey, what do you think of the name? And they basically were like, oh, it's clever. You should go for it. And
Right.
And here we are.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I didn't really think you were saying anything political. I just was like, oh, I get his name. That's pretty funny.
Mm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now you started your channel, started create content in 2017, in December 2017, and you've gained a huge following on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. And right now you have 52,000 subs and over 15 million views on YouTube. And we're wondering, what is some of your goals for your content in 2022?
Well, first off, I mean, it's just a blessing from up above to, to have that following and stuff like that. I mean, again, like I just said in the beginning of this interview, like, they didn't know any NASCAR fans, and now all of a sudden, wham, this, followers on Twitter and Instagram and, TikTok, YouTube. So it's a blessing. And I really appreciate you guys for watching the content over the years. But my plans for 2022, I mean, it's kind of up in the air because I do have an idea of what I want to do. Like, obviously, more at the track content is what I'm mostly interested in. It's like what I'm mainly focused on right now. Like, obviously I still have, the typical video ideas and all that stuff, new series and all that. And I've already debuted like some new series, like, random drivers, and then the BFM NR 2003 sim series. I'm going to kick it off later tonight after this interview. But I mean, as far as like at the track content, it's like, that's mostly for like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. Like, I don't know. I just want to, do better, like obviously get more access at the track and stuff. And then also, some of these tracks you go to, just the internet, it's just so terrible. So I got to look into like getting like my own little personal hotspot router that I can just keep in my backpack, and then, have awesome internet at all times. And then, mainly maybe some pre-race or some post-race stuff, you can post on like Twitter or Instagram or like, stream it on YouTube, that sort of thing. Because if you guys watch the Iceberg, me and him, like, well, he does like, some of these post race streams after sometimes, and I'm sometimes on them because I'm with him sometimes. So we're currently in talks to maybe unifying that a little bit more, having more of a plan for it and stuff, because in F1 they do these post-race stuff all the time. They got the mics and all that, so maybe we might do something like that. And then also, like, I mean, I've kind of gotten into some photography for a little bit. Like, I remember at this past Thanksgiving, I was taking pictures from my family and stuff, and they're like, wow, you're like really good at it. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should buy a camera and take it to the track. So I might do that too. But yeah, as far as the video content's concerned though, I mean, don't expect a whole lot of changes, but a whole lot of new series though.
Yep. Now we saw that this past season you were at some races, and you were mentioning doing more content at the track, and you recently moved to Virginia. So are you planning on going to like Martinsville and Richmond this upcoming season?
Oh yeah, because it's within driving distance now. I mean, it's like basically in the dead center like of all of the racetracks pretty much. So like when the Daytona 500 rolls around, I can just drive down to Florida. I mean, it'll probably be one of the longest drives I've ever taken. Like, the longest drive I've ever done is like from Vegas to Utah, because like my freshman year I went to school out in Utah, and that was like a 7.5 hour drive. So I would assume like they would be roughly, or the same amount to get from here to Florida. But yeah, now I'm within driving distance of all the major tracks basically in the South or on the East Coast, as some of y'all call it. And then obviously when I go to the Clash, I obviously have to take a flight out, and for any West Coast race I have to take a flight out. But yeah, I mean, it feels good to finally not have to spend a whole lot of money on flights now. I can finally save some money for once.
Yeah, I would say like Virginia and the Carolinas is like the capital of stock car racing, and Daytona is a pretty long drive. I went to Daytona a couple of years ago, and it was like 8-9 hour drives. Now you mentioned Jarrett a little bit earlier, and I was wanting to ask you, how did you meet Eric? Eastap, Jarrett Lundberg, and Daniel Baldwin. How did you meet those guys?
That's a funny story, man. So it was spring break, 2018. I basically just started the channel a couple months prior. It was already up to 1,000 subscribers, and I think I only had like a few videos uploaded. What happened was I had uploaded like consistently, and then I took a break for like a week or two, and then all of a sudden, this was like late January, early February, around that time. I get home after one of my journalism classes are done, and then wham, like I see the Casey Atwood bus video was at like 900 or 1,000. I'm like, what? It was just at 200 last night. And then like that, and then it just started growing and growing from there. So back when YouTube had DMs, Jarrett actually had DM'd me around that time to maybe come on the NASCAR Weekly podcast. And it's kind of crazy too, like, because they were just getting started too. Danny B and Jarrett, they were just getting started with YouTube the same time I was. And Eric was already established on there. I mean, Eric's been doing this for a decade now. And I remember I was in Reno on spring break, and I was basically plastered. I was just drunk, basically. I was just having a good old time pretty much out there with some friends I had grown up with who went to University of Nevada, Reno. And I'd gotten home and it was like 2, 3 in the morning. And then this was back when YouTube had DMs. I don't know if they still do, but yeah, this is back when they had it. And then what had happened was I had read it, I had opened it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I just went to sleep and I completely forgot about it for a month straight. So a month goes by. So now it's around April, May-ish, around that time. And then all of a sudden I checked the DMs again and I'm like, oh crap, that's right. He had invited on a show and stuff like that. And then I'd watch some of his videos, dang it. And then at that point, they already had gotten Eric on. And then Danny was and Jared, they finally were, starting to get more ideas for the podcast and stuff. And then the first time I had ever appeared on the NASCAR Weekly podcast that May was the first ever time I had met him, pretty much. And then, hey, I guess the rest is history.
That's awesome. Cool. That's awesome. I want to add on to the weekly podcast, but what's that been like with all the success it's gotten? You guys get thousands of views every week. What's all that been like, just with how you're growing as a creator and with all of them?
Dude, like I said, it's a blessing, man. It's just, it's crazy how everything's progressed too. Like when I had first joined the show, Jarrett had a set plan. He was like, hey, I have this like 3-4 year plan. I think we can get to, this certain point in a few years. And at the time that was so bizarre to me. I was like, whoa, like he already has this mapped out. Like we were just getting started and stuff. And he already has this like plan or whatever. I remember him saying like, hey, by 2020, we can get a Cup Series driver on. And then we had already accomplished that like 2 years prior, in our first year, pretty much. Like, so the way it's progressed has been a blessing, man, and blessing from up above. And, obviously having Eric's following too, obviously helped us out a ton, like when we first started the podcast, he was like, I think he was around 50,000 subs, like 60K around there. So like he was able to basically help us navigate through some of the pitfalls of other YouTubers he's seen come and go and all that, giving us advice and stuff like that. Cause obviously I still do some, some trolling and some pretty dumb stuff now, but like nowhere near the levels of when I first started. I would always be into something like every other day in like 2018, 2019. And then, over time, Eric, Jarrett, and Danny, that, we would kind of give each other advice, like, hey, do this, don't do that sort of thing and stuff. So at this point, it's basically one big happy family for us four, like we got each other's backs, every day. And then, like also, it's just, I mean, like they're great co-hosts, but like they're basically, like I said, family, personal friends, and whatever problems I have, I can, hit them up, they'll help me out, and, vice versa and all that stuff. So, I always dreamed about, trying to establish myself in some sort of, NASCAR media form or whatever, but to do it with like 3 of your best friends is even better. Like that's something I couldn't have imagined when I first started out. So it's awesome.
That's great.
I think we all feel the same way on this show as well. And we're really like a year into it basically. So I'm glad that you guys are able to do that. And I love hearing that.
Yes. And I was going back a little bit to you're talking about your video series a little bit earlier. Personally, my favorite is the Bad Seasons. What is personally your favorite to make, or do you even have a favorite?
I would just, when I first started, it was NASCAR Bust and in Bad Seasons when I was first starting out in 2018. Like that was basically like my core content for a while there. And then one night, my stepdad, me and him had a conversation about the channel, and he was like, but like, don't you always just post negative stuff? And then I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I mean, like, Yeah, I know what you're trying to do with, bad seasons and NASCAR bus, but it's like, I mean, like, yeah, like you can try and be as, as nice as you can in the videos, but it's still kind of a negative video on the guy, isn't it? I'm like, hey, he's kind of got a point there. So I started venturing out into other content, good
Yeah.
seasons, championship seasons, start out with that. But basically my most favorite now is just NASCAR topics. It's like, it's a listed playlist on my channel, and it's basically where you can just do a wide variety of things, talking about a random driver or like a random championship, that happened, or pretty much anything you can think of, so that's why I started the playlist NASCAR topics. So I would say that's my most favorite, because that gives me free range to talk about whatever I want and stuff, because obviously with bad seasons, good seasons and all that, you're basically stuck in a box. So it's like, oh, you just got to talk about, such and such either winning or doing terrible, and then, show the clips and kind of go over why they struggled and all that. But with NASCAR topics, I can just talk about whatever I want. So it's awesome.
Great.
Cool. Very cool.
And,
Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, you go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so I think I mentioned this to you before we started recording. We had one more guy that was supposed to be here, but he didn't know. So he was unfortunately not going to be here, but he did give me some questions to ask you. Awesome. So his name is Cam. His first one is, what was your life like before YouTube? I think you elaborated on that a little bit.
I mean, it was just like any typical, kid growing up, I guess, but like, my childhood was a little unique because, like I said, my family's from Virginia, so we moved out to Vegas when I was 3, basically. And my parents were former military. When they were married at the time, they were stationed out in Boston. That's where I was born. And then moved back to Virginia. And then they were stationed again in Las Vegas. So then once they were done, and once they separated, my mom was pretty much like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to move y'all around. We're just going to stay here pretty much. And, growing up, it was always interesting because like my mom, she has this like deep Southern accent, and it's like clear as day if you ever talk to her. And then it's like, once I started going to school and stuff and hearing like other adults talk like, more and stuff, I'm like, what, like, why do you sound like that? You know what I mean? So like, it was a total culture shock for her, coming out, living in Virginia her whole life and then moving out to the West Coast and stuff. So basically, me and my little brother were like the first people in our family ever to be raised on the West Coast and, to live there regularly and stuff like that. Because before then, and like basically my family is all East Coast, Southern raised, family and all that. So growing up, when I was like into NASCAR and all that, like I would barely talk about it in school because nobody had a fucking clue what I was talking about at all. Or I would get, laughs or scoffs. Like, what do you watch this for? You like watching rednecks go in circles? Like they had, it's like the typical stereotypes and stuff like that, But I'm also into other sports. I grew up playing football, running track and field, cross country, and all that stuff. Back in high school, I got my my Letterman jacket when I was in freshman. That was like a big deal to me. I was like, whoa, that never really happened. So, but yeah, like racing has always been number one for me, though. It's always been my personal number one. And just people back home, they just don't understand that. So basically, my whole life, it's just like I said earlier, growing up, not having too many people to talk to about racing and stuff like that, like obviously I talked to, to my friends about, football and basketball and stuff like that and play it and, debate topics on it. But yeah, when it comes to racing and stuff, nobody had a clue what I was talking about. So, but I mean, I'd say just my upbringing was kind of unique in a sense, just because, was the first ones in my family to be raised on the West Coast and all that stuff. And then it's kind of it's really interesting to come back and live in Virginia now as a 24-year-old. So I basically think it's like, whoa, it's like things really do come full circle,
Right. I got you.
I can definitely relate. Like when I was growing up too, I didn't have many friends that were into NASCAR, and people used to make fun of me because I like NASCAR. And I actually used to do track and field and cross country in high school too, Darian.
Nice, bro.
Yeah.
And one thing I was going to ask you a little bit earlier, but have you had any like weird fan interactions or online or in person?
Well, online, that's like, yeah, like, you're gonna have some of your negative fan interactions that, online, obviously. Yeah, especially NASCAR Twitter. Oh my gosh, and I will admit though that some of the, the bad interactions I've gotten, some of that is self-induced. That is my fault. Like I said, I would just, push the boundaries. I would play too much and all that. But a lot of it though, I feel like a lot of them, like they really take a lot of stuff either out of context or like they just go overboard with it. It's like, I'll say something and then they'll like interpret it in a totally different way. And I'm like, what just happened? Like I just said a freaking opinion. And it's like, oh, you don't like this, you don't like that and all that. So it's like, whoa. So don't fall down the rabbit hole that is NASCAR Twitter. You'll get eaten alive. But I mean, as far as at the track, like, there's an old saying. It's like the internet is not real life. At the track, 99% of the fans I meet have been awesome. They're like, hey, what's up, BFM? Can I get a picture with you? Or like, I'll talk racing with people because like I said, growing up, didn't have anybody to talk racing with. So I will talk to anybody about racing, 24/7, 365, any day of the week, anytime. Doesn't matter to me, whether it's online or in person. So the in-person reactions we get, not just me, the NASCAR Weekly podcast as well, have been mostly phenomenal. Now, when I'm walking at the track, do notice, some people giving me, gross stares and all that stuff, or maybe saying a little things behind my back. Yeah, I've noticed that too and stuff. But I mean, again, I'm at the track to watch a race. I also have a job to do, to try and, tell people on Twitter what's going on and stuff and try to get some content and all that stuff. Like the worst interaction though happened to Jared. Actually, somebody actually went up to him and they were like, hey, are you the iceberg? And he's like, yeah. And then they said, F you. And then they walked away. And then he told me that and we started laughing. But no, it's like, I'm like, Jared, you're so lucky. Hopefully that happens to me, because to me and Jared, like, that's funny, bro. Like, I mean, so if that's like the worst interaction we get, then I'm all for it, because look, it's like, if you're doing something on the internet, if you're, trying to build a following and stuff like that, you're going to have people that love you and then you're going to have people that hate you. And then I even had one fan come up to me and, we were talking for a while. And then before he left, he was like, you have a lot of haters. I'm like, yeah, but I got a lot of people who love me too. So, that evens out.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely understand what you're talking about when it comes to toxic NASCAR fans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not on Twitter, but I'm on Instagram a ton. I'm in a lot of group chats. There's some characters there. I will tell you that.
Yeah. And I just feel like NASCAR fans, like some of them they just go to the extremes and stuff like that. Like I feel like some of them try to come off as like intellectual and like really, really smart, like, oh, I'm smarter than you and stuff like that. But then usually they end up just, plummeting on their own face and stuff like that, trying to make points and stuff like that. Like, again, I'm not perfect. I've made a ton of mistakes on the internet. Trust me, you guys have seen that full hand. I've apologized multiple times. But, at the end of the day, though, you can learn from your mistakes. You can learn from your mistakes and, and you can better yourself. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to better myself, each and every day. But if you ask me personally, like, have I done anything that would warrant like any type of deplatforming or, cancellation type situation? No, I don't think I've done anything like that. It's just little ticky-tacky stuff, every now and then.
Right. I would say I've gotten into, stupid arguments. I'd say like, some of them were warranted. Some of them were just plain stupid. And some of them, talked out with. And some people I just plain don't talk to anymore. And I don't think I've done anything either that's worth like, oh, Nasboys should be taken off YouTube. But at the same time, I do think that, there's a lot of people that don't like me. I don't really care. They're just people on the internet.
Yeah, it's, it's the internet, dude. You have to be mentally tough, and like, in anything you do, really. I mean, you're going to have people that love you and hate you, whether it's on the internet or like, at a job or school, per se. So, you just got to deal with it.
Thanks, man.
Yep, agreed. And yeah, like, for me, like with Facebook, I'm on Facebook, so I've seen a lot of toxic behavior with boomers in the Facebook group.
God, that's a different breed. I don't even have Facebook.
I definitely seen what a lot of what Mike's gone through with some of that because me and him are really close friends, and he's actually a Logano fan, and me and him, I joke with him all the time about how he rages a lot about Joey, but he's very passionate about the sport, and I feel like being a content creator, you have to be passionate about it, and you have to, learn about how to deal with hate and people going after you. But at the same time, it's always great to have people who love you and support you and all that as well. But yeah, Mike, did Cam have any other questions for Darian?
Yeah, he's got 2 more questions. He wants to know what you think can save or improve on NASCAR.
Interesting question. I mean, the next gen car, obviously, like this is a make or break, car. Like, I mean, yes, the Gen 6 had its moments and stuff like that, but overall, did it really, help out the sport long term? Well, no, I don't think because in the end, we had to basically scale back on the horsepower and stuff to quote unquote make the racing closer and stuff. But again, closer racing does not equal better racing, as we all know now, so I think this is a make or break car. Obviously I've seen some of the testing going on, and then, some of the stuff I had seen and heard early on from some sources, and then, just, scrolling through Twitter, some of the drivers saying, yeah, we can full throttle it. Ooh, that was not good. But like now I'm starting to hear it's like, they might go with, a package that's somewhere in the middle, 670 horsepower, and then that will require some type of off throttle time. So, that's somewhat promising, but again, we have to see how they race, in person and on the track next year. That's one of the things. And then also I had asked this on Twitter yesterday too. And Formula One right now, they have everything going its way. They have their own Netflix series, like the personalities are awesome, and an organic championship battle, no playoffs required, no BS, straight up points. And now we're tied heading into the final race of the season between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. So a couple of things I think NASCAR can learn from F1, the TV deal. F1's TV package, what they have going on with Sky Sports, and then F1, their app, F1 TV. It's absolutely amazing. All the access you get, and, there's no buffering and stuff. It's clear as day to watch. And then, the graphics too are amazing. And the commentators too, that's another thing. NASCAR, we love our commentators. We love Mike Joy, we love, the old vets and stuff who have been doing this for a while. But, we're about to enter 2022. And, some of the same people are still, commentating and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, in my opinion, it would be good to have a bit of a change up. Not too much of a change up though, because, NASCAR fans, like, the word change, brings a ton of fear, like, oh, we're going to change everything and stuff. So, I do think that for the next go around, when the television contract's up, I don't know who's going to have it, but whoever gets it, you need to make sure the graphics package is awesome, fantastic, and all that stuff. And then make sure, the commentator, like, because sometimes these races will get strung out, and the commentators, I feel like, will kind of lose interest in racing NASCAR. It's like, oh, and then they'll like make these like jokes and stuff. And it's like, sometimes it doesn't feel like they're covering a sport. It feels like some type of, I can't explain it. I want to say like sitcom or like sitcom or like a sketch or something like that. I mean, that's what NASCAR on Fox has been doing for years, and I'm tired of it. These like little sketches and all that stuff. Like, just stick to the racing. Let's talk about the racing, and then more at the track content too. That's another thing. Let's bring back NASCAR race day. Let's bring back, like that NASCAR on speed type shows that we used to have, NASCAR trackside, all that. So that's one thing. Another thing too, like, I'm just never going to fall in love with this points format either. This whole elimination style, winning your in thing. Like, if that's your thing, that's fine. I totally get it. Like, hey, Darian, what about the excitement and stuff? It's like, but it's not organic though. That's the thing. And I grew up in an era when they were just starting the chase. 2004 is when I started watching. So every single season I've seen some type of form of playoffs or the chase for the cup, as they used to call it in my childhood.
I have to agree. Yeah.
I'm sorry. But but the one thing though that the original chase had, at least, was that you had the best of both worlds. You had this playoff type atmosphere, the 10 or 12 drivers, the best 10 or 12 drivers make it in and duke it out for the championship in the final 12 races. They get bonus points and all that stuff. But also, there wasn't this elimination style bracket. They had to be consistent. And, the 2004 chase, that was the first ever chase I watched. That was awesome. Like, Kurt Busch won the championship over Jimmy Johnson by like 8 points, man. Something crazy like that. So I don't know. I feel like, NASCAR, they put themselves in a box. You either keep the playoffs or you get rid of them entirely. I'm all for getting rid of them entirely, because if we do, we don't have the same scenario every year. Each and every year since 2014, we know 4 people are going to make it. So, if a guy wins a championship by 5 points or 500 points, I personally don't care, because I know the best driver won that season. But in conclusion, the type of season Kyle Larson had in 2021, if that caution didn't come out for David Starr, and Truex or Hamlin won the championship, the fan base would have gone berserk, because a guy who wins 9-10 races, in a season, and then leaving that type of season up to chance, like, oh, he might win the championship, when in any other points format, he would have basically locked it up. I don't know. It's just ridiculous to me. But, that's just my personal preference, though.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100% on all those points. And I actually started watching NASCAR in 2004 as well. And, I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan, so seeing him lose that was kind of rough. But yeah, I have to agree with you. Like, I don't like the playoff format now, and I would say most of the fan base doesn't either. But Mike, anything else to add with that?
I think I like some aspects of the format, like the eliminations.
Yeah,
I wish they would reduce the number of drivers.
16
is just too predictable.
That's almost half the field, and like basically half of those guys are not going to be in the final running anyway. You know what I mean? So it just promotes mediocrity. Like it sort of reminds me of like the NCAA tournament for basketball. You have 64 teams, and basically those lower seeded teams, those smaller schools, are not going to are definitely not going to make it. But for NASCAR, they're like, hey, we might get that Cinderella story. But again, it's racing. Those types of Cinderella stories, I mean, Tony Stewart winning in 2011, that was, that was kind of a Cinderella story, but I mean, that was a mega buck team. So like, if anybody was going to turn it around, it was obviously going to be them. But like for a small team, like a Front Row Motorsports, with Michael McDowell, like a 16th seed somehow competing for the championship, it's not going to happen. And they know it and we know it. But I will give them this. It is entertaining in some aspects, because it's like, oh, this guy's going to get eliminated and stuff like that. Like, so it is somewhat entertaining. So I'll give them that. But again, it's like deep down in my heart, I know for a fact, it's like, it's just artificial. Right. Watching the F1 race in Saudi Arabia yesterday, though, that gave me a feeling watching a race that I haven't felt since 2011, to be honest with you. When Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart were duking it out in those final races for the title, like 2011 Phoenix and stuff, knowing that, like either Stewart or Edwards, like they're so close on points, like watching the F1 race yesterday brought back that exact same feeling that I haven't felt. And I haven't felt with this playoff format, quite frankly. It's entertaining, but it's artificial at the end of it.
Got you. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And one last question from Cam is, if there's one thing you could say to your fans, what would it be?
Well, I think I've probably said this multiple times, but again, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. You guys have, like some people on the internet and stuff, they'll have you like think that I'm like egotistical and stuff like that, or like, my opinion's higher than others and stuff like That's not the case at all. Like at the end of the day, we're all racing fans. We're all the same. We love watching racing on, Saturdays, Sundays, whenever. NASCAR fans and really motorsports fans in general are the most loyal in all of sports. Agreed. So being able to connect with them and, in some way through the internet and through content and stuff, and just being myself, quite frankly, has been an absolute blessing. Like, again, I only have 2 more semesters of college at the moment that I plan on finishing online out here. And, when I was first, starting out, I was like, man, it would be really cool if I could, work for somebody and, report and stuff like that. But then accidentally, like, this whole YouTube thing came about and stuff. And I'm like, whoa, like this was the dream right here. Like this was the dream I had always imagined and stuff, because at the end of the day, I'm my own boss. I make the final decisions. I make the content, I say, what I feel and stuff like that, and I don't have anybody hovering over me, being like, oh, you can't say that, you can't do that and stuff like that. And it wouldn't happen without you guys. So again, thank you guys so much, man.
One last question for me. What advice would you have to give to people who want to start making content for NASCAR, even in YouTube in general?
Just have fun, man. You need to have fun with it. And, like, it's going to take some time. It'll take some time, to see like, hey, what type of content works and what doesn't. Don't get discouraged neither. Like, the YouTube algorithm is one of the most complicated ever. And, like, I think TikTok's is like a close second as well. But, just keep grinding, keep making the content. And at the end of the day, have fun with it. You need to have fun. Okay. Right. That's the reason I started doing this YouTube thing. Like, there was one point where last year I just like took like a month and a half break. I was like, I can't take it anymore, so I wasn't having fun with it and stuff like that. I wasn't having fun being on the podcast or doing YouTube. So I was like, hey, there's no point in doing this right now. I just need to take a break. So if you're not having fun, don't do it. But if you are going to do YouTube, just be aware there's some criticism. You have to take criticism. You're going to have some, some stuff, going your way that you're not going to like. But if you're having fun, then that will precede all of that stuff. So just have fun and, just figure out what type of content you want to make.
Awesome.
Definitely. And as we're reaching the checker flag of our show today, we want to thank you again, Darian, for coming on. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Darian. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We really appreciate it. Once again, I'm a big fan of your videos.
Yeah.
And yeah, that will conclude this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Yep. We will have our social media links in the description below, same as Darian's. And this has been the Nasboys podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed, and thanks for watching to the end. We'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Goodbye.